Hey there, I'm Charlie and welcome back to Spooky Season. I'm sure you're aware by now that this big white sheet means we're doing arts and crafts today, so let's jump right into it. Today we are going to be using the Halloween candle making kit which I showed you in my previous Halloween haul. As you know, I'm a bit of a candle bitch, as you can tell from the candles on the shelves behind me, so I cannot wait to get started with this one. Before we get into it, this one is going to need a little bit of adult supervision because we are going to be melting and pouring hot wax. So for this I have my housemate Ian, who's currently behind the camera, who's going to help us out today. Before we get to that though, let's open this up and see what we're working with. Ooh, skull. Which means this is my ghost. Jesus. Ooh. They only gave us one wick holder. May only be able to pour one at a time. Okay, now that I've unboxed everything, let's have a look at what they've given us to work with. So first of all, we have, of course, our two molds, being a skull and a ghost, though they look very funny at this point because we're going to fill them like so. Next up, we have a candle wick and a needle for threading that wick through the molds. So we're just gonna keep that to the side and be very careful with that because it's sharp. Next up, we have a couple of wooden popsicle sticks which we'll be using for stirring the wax and the pigments, and a wick holder to stabilize the wick while we're pouring into the molds. Now, I only have one of these and two molds, so we will have to pour separately. It's chewy! And this bag here is the wax that we need to make the actual body of the candles. Now I believe we only have just enough to do one of each of the molds, so we're gonna try really hard not to mess up. Finally, we have these two little bags of pigment to dye the wax with. We have a grey, charcoaly, glittery color and a beautiful iridescent purpley color. First thing that we have to do with this is we need to split our wax into two somewhat equal parts so that we can melt them each and then add their colorant. So what we're doing is we're just splitting our wax in half and then adding a portion of it back from one to the other to account for the different size volumes that we've got. There aren't any specific instructions or measurements for this part, so we're basically eyeballing it and hoping for the best. But once we've got this separated, we can slowly start to melt it on a low heat until all of the soy wax is fully liquid. Once we got the wax to a liquid state, it was time to add our pigments. As I showed you earlier, we do have two different kinds of pigments. One is a grayish black color for the ghost, and one is a more vibrant purple color for the skull. You are of course allowed to add as little or as much of either pigment to either mold, but I decided to put in just a little bit of the dark pigment for the ghost because I feel like the ghost should be more of a pale translucent color, and we just went ham with the purple for the skull. Full pigment. Once you've melted the pigment through the wax, you need to let it cool down a little before we pour it into the actual molds. So now we're going to prep the actual molds with the wicks before we can pour our hot wax in. So we do have this one length of wick that they've given us, so I'm just going to cut it in half. That was a satisfying sound. Yeah. So I'm going to put one of these aside and grab out our needle. Very careful with sharp pointy things. Success! We have our wick on a needle. I reckon we should start with Ghosty Boy. We'll thread them both, but let's start with Ghosty Boy. So it wants us to thread the needle through the base of the mold and bring it up through the top. I'm so worried that this is going to ruin the structural integrity of the mold, but it's what they've told me to do, so I guess it's what we're gonna do. One of my rhinestones fell off my hat. This is not graceful. Maybe I should have started with the skull. Haha, I got it. Ha! Success! Success! I'm going to take the needle off. I'm going to leave string out the top because that's what we're going to trim to be the actual wick. And this is the bit that you need to balance. So we'll secure that on there when we fill it so that it doesn't bugger off. And you can see a little bit of my lipstick on there. My bad. Okay, let's thread this other one up while we're here and then we can move on to our next step. So much easier. Really should have started with this one. No! Get out. Don't stab yourself with the needle. Haha! Success! Yeah, that should be enough. So we'll put that to the side, ready to pour, and we're gonna put away our needle. Safety first. All right, now that we have our molds prepped, we get to pour our hot wax in. It does say to keep the molds still after you've poured the wax in them to help them have the flattest bottom. So I think what we're going to do, because we do have cats, is we're going to pour the molds and then transfer them to the fridge to set so that they'll be safe. Now it was at this point in the instructions that it advises to heat up the molds with a heat gun, or I guess a hairdryer, but we don't own one. So we kind of skipped that step and hope for the best. It also says you're meant to let the wax cool to 75 degrees Celsius, but we also don't have a thermometer. So again, kind of hoping for the best here. But once we get the wax down to a temperature that we decided felt cool enough, it was time to pour. We started out with the smaller pour, which was of course the Ghost, and had a little bit of spillage. But overall, it went pretty well. Though we decided at this point transferring from the bench to the fridge was going to be a bit of a challenge with the raw molds. So we got out a flat serving tray just to make that process a little bit more streamlined. Once we had replaced our molds onto our tray, we topped up the Ghost, and then it was time to pour into our skull mold. Now, as I said, we did guess these breakdowns because there wasn't any specific instructions on how much to melt for each product, and we were pretty damn close, honestly. We had a little bit too much for the Ghost and a little bit too little for the skull, so we've topped up the skull with the residual Ghost wax. I'm hoping that this will just give it a bit of a dark center, or even maybe a marbling, but honestly, your guess is as good as mine at this point. Now that we've actually assembled our candles, we need to let them fully set inside and out. So we have transferred them to the fridge so that they're safe from our cats and our cats are safe from it. And we're going to let it set until it is ready to go. So it's about 5 to 6 hours later, and I think that the candles have fully set. So I'm gonna try and demold them now and we'll see how it goes. So before I actually demold them, I just want to draw attention to a couple of things first. We only had one popsicle stick with the actual hole in it that was the wick guide. We taped our other wick to a popsicle stick so that we could do these both at the same time. I'm not sure whether or not that's going to affect the end result, but I wanted to bring it up. Also, looking at them now, we've really well centralized the wick in the Ghost, but our skull wick is not centered. However, this is the base of the candle, so hopefully it'll be okay. I think we're gonna start with our little Ghost because he's a bit slimmer built. I'm just gonna push this one to the side, and we're just gonna start with taking off the tape, kind of, and trying to separate this stick. Okay, so it seems that off the back we have made a bit of a faux pas with the tape because now we have this line here where the wax is uneven because it's stuck to the tape and the stick. Hopefully that won't make it too unstable when we go to burn. So this is a very flexible silicone mold, so we can just crack off the excess wax around the sides and hopefully that'll help us demold it. But this is my first attempt at demolding anything. Hope it goes well. So I've seen people do this where they just sort of pull the mold off the sides a little to help, and it does seem to be helping. So far nothing is snagged or caught, which I'm hoping is a good sign. Ooh. Oh, look at that. Okay, so they're looking reasonably smooth on the outside. I am wondering now whether we should have somehow lined the molds with any kind of lubricant or oil or anything, but it didn't mention it, so hopefully it's fine. We're gonna try and get him over his little arms. That's the challenge for this one, I reckon, because I don't want to break his poor arms off. I think little bit at a time, little bit at a time. That's the strategy I'm going with. Might not be the best strategy, but it's the one I'm going with. Oh, I got an arm free, I got an arm free. All right, let's try and get the other side. Hey! All right, and now it's just the top. We're gonna pull the wick. I would call that a Ghost. Now, in the picture, they definitely didn't add any pigment because it was still a white Ghost and this guy is just straight up gray. But I think he's really cute. I think he turned out super well. Now, I'm just gonna unfold this just because I don't want to somehow damage it by keeping it bent over like that. I'm just gonna trim off the bottom of this wick a little and some of the top of this wick because it's a bit long. So let's start with the one down here. We're just gonna trim that off near the base. Voila. And we're gonna give him just about that much wick on top. I think that this is the cutest, coolest thing I have made so far in my life. It is bloody awesome. That was so much more successful than I anticipated it was gonna be, and I am so thrilled. I can't wait to do the other one. So let's jump right in. This came off a lot easier, and because we didn't do the tape, and also because we didn't fill it white as far to the top, I think that was a factor. We don't have any of that sticky residual piece that we had on our Ghost. However, because it's not fully full, it's not flat, and I do worry about its structural integrity a little. So, same process as before, I'm going to pull the silicone mold off the candle to start with, to the sides, gives a little bit more wiggle room. Ooh, I see teeth. This one doesn't have as much like sideways stretch as the other one, I don't think. Oh, I got a little bit. Yeah. Oh, that's satisfying. Okay, I think I've gotten about all the pull bits I can before I have to start peeling it, as it were. Hello. I honestly don't know the best strategy of getting this out because it's so bulbous. The mouth of the mold is so small compared to the bulbous head. I guess this is why they're made of silicone. Hey! Wow, this is a different texture. All right, so looking at him, we definitely haven't centralized the wick on the base, but it's looking pretty good at the top. This one did come off a little off center at the top, but pretty close. And you can see a dark patch here, and I think that's from when we topped it up with the gray, and it just fell straight forwards. But if you look through this one, you can see all these tiny little imperfections and holes, and I reckon that's air bubbles. I reckon that's a bunch of tiny air bubbles that we didn't pop, and so when it's solidified, they came up. That's my completely uneducated guess. Good as any, I assume. All right, let's trim the wicks and we'll get to a burn test. Okay, and we'll give you about the same distance. Beautiful. Okay, so we have these beautiful, gorgeous little candles. I am so proud of them. I think that they look great. So we should see if they work. Now it's time for a burn test. I just got my little doggy lighter here and we're gonna see if these gorgeous little candles can burn as pretty as they look. I'm gonna start with my little ghosty boy. And now we're gonna light our skull. Now it is going to take a sec for those wicks to get down. Oh, wait. You stay lit. And we'll see what happens. Okay, I think this one has made contact with the wax. This one needs a little bit more love. I think they've both made contact with the candles. I think they are both officially lit. I'm worried the skull's going to go out. It's technically still burning. That's the tiniest flame I have ever seen. I think that one might need to be relit. Not sure why the skull is not burning, but little ghosty boy I think is having a great time being a candle. Skull, I'm a little disappointed. I think I'll give him just one more try to light the skull before I let him rest in peace. This is really hot. I don't think the skull wants to burn. It might be because he knows that most of my skulls are in my permanent collection and don't get burnt. Maybe he just doesn't want to be left out. That, and also it burnt through the vertical wick real quick, but as soon as it came to the rounded head, it struggled. Whereas this one that had more of a pointy head kept burning. And I think that may be a factor. I'm gonna blow him out now, just so I don't burn my whole ghost away in one sitting. But overall, I feel like that went pretty well. Even with a little bit burnt off the top, I think they both still look pretty darn good. And there we have it. That was my Halloween candle making kit adventure. I had a great time doing this and I really do feel like I've experienced that next step on the journey to candle making. Let me know in the comments below which of my candle creations is your favorite and whether or not you'd try something like this for yourself. I hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any spooky season coming this month. I hope you're having an amazing day and I can't wait to see you all soon. Bye!